Hello dear YouTube viewers, I hope you're doing well. Okays, let's start our video. After dinner the mood was easy, filled with small talk about the day. The husband leaned back in his chair, loosening his tie, and mentioned the upcoming work party as though it were the most ordinary thing in the world. He didn't expect it to carry any weight, just another corporate gathering with colleagues, food, and maybe a few glasses of wine. It's just a corporate party, Friday night. Nothing big, he said casually, reaching for his glass of water. The room shifted in an instant. His wife, Anna, who had been laughing only a moment before, went very still. Her fingers tightened around her own glass. She lowered her gaze, and for a brief second, it looked like she wasn't even breathing. "Friday?" she asked softly, the single word carrying something heavy, something he couldn't yet name. He chuckled lightly, not reading the mood at first. "Yeah, Friday evening. It's more of a formality, really. Just people networking, shaking hands, pretending to like each other." But she didn't laugh with him. Her lips pressed together, and she stayed silent. He noticed her hands tremble slightly as she set her glass down, careful not to make a sound. The air between them thickened, the casual tone he had set moments ago now out of place. He tilted his head, trying to catch her eyes, but she avoided him, staring instead at the table. "Is something wrong?" he asked, his voice gentler this time. She forced a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "No, it's nothing." But the way her voice wavered betrayed her. It wasn't nothing. There was something buried in her sudden reaction, something that transformed a simple announcement into a weight neither of them had been prepared to carry. The husband sat there, fork idle in his hand, realizing for the first time that the word party had touched a nerve in her he couldn't yet understand. The dinner table, once warm with conversation, now felt cold and distant, as if he had opened a door to a part of her past she had never wanted exposed. Anna rose from the table with a suddenness that startled him. She didn't say much, only muttered something about being tired, and carried her plate to the sink. Her movements were too fast, too deliberate, as though she needed to escape rather than simply clear the dishes. Before he could ask again what was wrong, she had slipped down the hallway and disappeared into the bedroom, leaving him alone with the half-finished meal and a silence that felt unusually heavy. For a moment he sat there, uncertain if following her was the right choice. Maybe she truly was just tired, but the memory of her trembling hand on the glass, the way her voice cracked when she asked about Friday, it pulled at him. He rose quietly, his chair scraping against the floor, and walked to the bedroom door. Inside, he found her sitting on the edge of the bed, her posture folded inward. She wasn't scrolling on her phone or reading, the usual ways she wound down. Instead, she held a photo frame in both hands, their wedding picture, the one where he had his arm around her waist, both of them smiling at the camera with that kind of unguarded joy that belonged to another time. Her thumb traced along the edge of the frame, back and forth, as though the motion itself could soothe her. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. When she finally looked up at him, there was a fragility in her gaze he had rarely seen, as though one more word from him could shatter her completely. "Anna," he said softly, closing the door behind him. "What's going on? Did I say something wrong?" She quickly shook her head, wiping at her cheek though no tear had fallen yet. "No, you didn't do anything." He sat beside her on the bed, close enough to feel the warmth of her body, but not touching her, not wanting to push too far. "Then what is it?" "It's just a work thing. Why does it upset you so much?" His voice was calm, but there was genuine confusion underneath it. Her lips parted as if she were about to answer, but then she closed them again. She turned her eyes back to the photo frame, gripping it tighter. "It's not you," she whispered, almost too quiet to hear. "Then what?" he pressed gently. She inhaled slowly, as though trying to steady herself, and for a brief moment her eyes went distant. It was like she had been pulled into a memory she had tried to bury for years. He noticed the way her shoulders tensed, the way her breathing shifted. Finally, she shook her head. "I don't want to talk about it. Not right now." The words weren't sharp, but they carried a finality that told him not to push further. Still, he couldn't ignore the way her hands trembled as she placed the wedding photo back on the nightstand, almost like she was afraid of letting it go. He sat there in the dim light of their bedroom, watching her retreat further inside herself, and for the first time, he felt the stirrings of something more troubling than confusion. Whatever haunted her wasn't about the future. It was about something she had already lived through. He sat awake long after Anna had drifted into a restless sleep, the dim glow of the bedside lamp stretching shadows across the walls. His mind kept circling back to the moment at dinner, the glass in her trembling hand, the way her voice had cracked over a single word Friday. She wasn't normally like this. Anna was steady, cheerful, the kind of person who could light up a room with her presence, supportive in every way. She had stood by him through promotions and late nights, never once making him feel guilty for the demands of his job. But tonight, it was as if he had seen a stranger in his wife's eyes. It wasn't the first time, though he had never truly connected the dots before. He thought back. Family weddings where she stayed quiet and withdrawn once the music grew too loud. Company dinners where she claimed to have headaches and excused herself early. Even casual gatherings with friends that included a little too much wine. She always had a reason, always an explanation, and he had never questioned it. He told himself she was simply more introverted than others, or that she just preferred smaller, quieter settings. But now, with the memory of her near breakdown fresh in his mind, those excuses no longer felt complete. Lying there, he watched her face soften in sleep, though every now and then her brow furrowed, as if even her dreams were unsettled. He felt a dull ache in his chest. This wasn't just about him telling her he had a work party. Something in that word party had cracked her open in a way he didn't understand. Her tears weren't about me, he thought, staring at the ceiling. They were about something buried deep. He turned onto his side, studying her breathing, trying to decipher the weight she carried. For the first time, he considered that maybe the reason she avoided those gatherings wasn't preference at all. It was fear. The thought unsettled him. What kind of fear? What had happened to her that the idea of a social event, something he regarded as harmless, could bring her to the edge of tears? He tried to imagine possibilities, but each one only made his chest tighten more. Had she been hurt? Humiliated? Betrayed? The uncertainty gnawed at him. He wanted to reach for her, wake her, ask outright, but he also knew that pressing too hard would only drive her deeper into silence. So instead he lay there, caught between his need for answers and his desire to protect her. He closed his eyes eventually, though sleep was slow to come. One thing had become clear. This wasn't a passing mood, nor a simple dislike of crowded rooms. His wife was carrying a wound, one she had never spoken aloud, and whether she realized it or not, it was now bleeding into their present. The night stretched long and restless. He lay in the dim glow of the bedside lamp, listening to the slow rhythm of Anna's breathing, wondering if she was awake or only pretending. The silence between them wasn't the usual kind, the comforting quiet of two people who understood each other. No, this silence was sharp, layered with unspoken words, heavy enough to press on his chest. Finally, unable to hold it in, he shifted closer. "Anna," he whispered, "talk to me, please." She stirred, her eyes opening, reflecting the lamplight. For a moment she looked as if she might turn away again, but then she let out a shaky sigh. Her voice was fragile, as though it might break mid-sentence. "Work parties, they make me uneasy." He frowned. "Uneasy? Why?" "It's just colleagues, some food, a bit of chatter." She shook her head, staring past him, her eyes fixed on some memory he couldn't see. "Not all gatherings end with laughter." The words sent a chill through him. They carried too much weight to be casual. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it back, hugging her knees to her chest instead. "Anna, I need you to tell me what this is about," he said softly but firmly. "You froze tonight. You were holding our wedding photo like it was the only thing keeping you steady. How can I understand if you won't tell me?" Her eyes shimmered with tears. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then whispered, "Because I don't want you to see me differently." The admission cut deep. He leaned forward, heart aching. "Differently? Anna, you're my wife. There's nothing you could tell me that would change how I see you." But she shook her head, wiping at her cheeks as the first tears slipped free. "You say that now, But you don't know. Then help me know, he urged, his voice almost breaking with the weight of it. Let me in. For a moment it seemed she might. Her lips trembled, and her eyes locked with his, as if she were standing at the edge of a confession, ready to let it spill. But then something inside her shut down. She turned away from him, shoulders curling inward, her back to him now. I can't, she whispered into the pillow. Not tonight. He sat there, staring at the curve of her back, the sound of her muffled sobs filling the room. He wanted to reach for her, to hold her until whatever haunted her dissolved, but she had drawn a line he couldn't cross. Lying back down, he felt the distance between them more sharply than ever, though they shared the same bed. Sleep didn't come easily. He stared into the dark, replaying her words again and again. Not all gatherings end with laughter. I don't want you to see me differently. And he knew, with a certainty that kept his chest tight, that whatever truth she was hiding was far bigger than he had imagined. Morning light spilled into the room, soft and golden, but it did little to ease the heaviness that lingered from the night before. He moved quietly around the kitchen, making coffee, glancing toward the hallway every few seconds. Anna hadn't come out yet. He debated knocking, but something told him to wait. She needed time. When she finally appeared, her face was pale, her eyes carrying the shadows of a sleepless night. She sat across from him at the table without a word, her hands wrapped around the mug he slid in front of her. For a long while, they just sat there in silence, the only sound the ticking of the wall clock. Then, with a voice that trembled but carried determination, she said, I need to tell you something. And once I do, you might see me differently. He set his cup down, leaning forward. Nothing you could say will change how I see you. She gave a fragile smile that didn't last. Her fingers tightened around the mug. When I was younger, my first job, actually, I was invited to a work party. I thought it would be fun, a chance to connect, to feel like I belonged. She paused, swallowing hard. But it wasn't. He stayed still, letting her speak, though his chest already tightened with unease. Her eyes glossed over as she stared at the table, not at him. That night, one of the supervisors cornered me. I remember the smell of alcohol on his breath, the way he blocked the door so casually, like it was his right. He tried to. Her voice broke, and she pressed a hand against her lips before continuing. I managed to get away. I pushed past him and ran, but I never told anyone. Not my boss, not HR. I was terrified of losing my job, of being blamed, of not being believed. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. So I buried it. I told myself it was over, that I had escaped, and if I never spoke about it, maybe it would fade. But it never did. Every time someone mentioned an office party, every time I saw coworkers gathering with drinks and music, it came back. The fear, the shame, the anger. And when you said work party last night, it was like I was right back there again. Her voice cracked completely, and she covered her face with her hands. I thought I buried it, but when you said work party, it all came back. He felt as though the floor had dropped out from under him. His stomach churned with anger. Not at her, never at her, but at the man who had dared to corner her, at the system that had made her too afraid to speak. His hands curled into fists beneath the table, a raw heat burning through his chest. At the same time, a deep sadness weighed heavy on him, knowing she had carried this pain in silence for so long. Slowly, he rose and came around to her side. Gently, he took her hands away from her face, holding them firmly in his own. His voice was steady, though emotion threatened to break it. Anna, listen to me. You don't ever have to hide from me again. Not this, not anything. Her eyes met his then, watery and uncertain. You are not defined by what happened that night, he continued, brushing a tear from her cheek with his thumb. You are stronger than what he tried to do to you. And I swear, nothing about this changes how I see you, except that now I see how much braver you've been all these years. A sob escaped her, but this time she collapsed into his arms, holding onto him tightly as though afraid he might vanish. He wrapped her in his embrace, firm and protective, and let her cry against his chest. In that moment, as her tears soaked into his shirt, he realized the truth. Her breakdown hadn't weakened them. It had revealed the depth of her trust, the willingness to finally let him share her burden. And he knew he would carry it with her, no matter how heavy it was. The day after her confession, the house felt quieter, softer, as if both of them were treading carefully around something fragile. He kept replaying her words in his mind, the raw tremor in her voice when she admitted what had happened years ago. Each time he thought about it, his decision only grew clearer. He wouldn't go to the work party. Nothing, networking, career advancement, or appearances, was worth dragging her through that pain again. By late afternoon, he had made up his mind. As she folded laundry on the couch, he sat beside her, taking a deep breath. "Anna, I've decided. I'm not going." She stopped, hands frozen over a neatly folded shirt. "Not going where?" "The party," he said simply. "I can't do it. Not after what you told me. I'd rather stay home with you." Her eyes widened. For a moment he thought she might feel relieved, but instead, she shook her head quickly, almost in panic. "No, you can't do that." He frowned. "Why not? You just told me how much those parties, how much they bring back. I won't put you through that." Her hands gripped the fabric in her lap, knuckles pale. "It's your career," she said firmly, though her voice trembled. "Don't let my past hold you back. You've worked too hard for this company. Networking matters, and these events, they notice who shows up. Please don't miss it because of me." He leaned closer, frustration and tenderness warring inside him. "Anna, do you think I care about schmoozing with colleagues more than I care about you? I can't sit in some hotel ballroom drinking cheap wine while knowing it's hurting you here at home." She looked at him then, her eyes shimmering, her expression torn between gratitude and guilt. "That's just it," she whispered. "If you stay home, I'll feel like I'm taking something away from you. And I don't want that. I don't want to be the reason you step back when you should be stepping forward." He rubbed his temples, caught in the tug of war. On one side, his loyalty and protective instinct. On the other, her plea not to sacrifice his career for her sake. Finally, he exhaled. "You're asking me to go, but you're the one who will pay the emotional price." She placed her hand gently over his. "Maybe that's what love is. Sacrifice. But it's also balance. I can't ask you to choose me instead of your future. We have to find a way where it can be both, where you go. But I know you're safe, and you know I'm strong enough to handle it." He studied her face, searching for any sign that she was only saying it to please him. But her eyes held steady, full of resolve. She wasn't pushing him away. She was trying to meet him in the middle. Slowly, he nodded, though the conflict inside him remained. "All right. If I go, it's only because you've asked me to. But the second it feels wrong, I'm walking out and coming home to you." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "That's all I need to hear." For the first time since the conversation began, he felt a fragile sense of peace. They were learning, painfully, haltingly, that love wasn't about choosing one over the other. It was about carrying the weight together, even when the balance felt impossible. At work the next morning, the weight of his decision pressed heavily on his shoulders. He mentioned to a few colleagues, almost casually, that he might not make it to the party. The reaction was immediate. "What? You can't skip this one," one of the senior associates said, eyes widening. "The partners will be there. They notice who shows up." Another chimed in, half joking but laced with pressure. "Networking is everything at this firm. You know that. Skipping makes it look like you're not serious about moving up." Their voices circled around him, each comment a subtle reminder of what was at stake. He tried to brush it off, smiling faintly, muttering something about family commitments, but the tension in their faces told him they weren't amused. By the time he returned to his desk, the conflict inside him had only deepened. On one side was Anna, her trembling confession, the image of her clutching their wedding photo like a lifeline. On the other was his career, the years of hard work that could easily be overshadowed if he missed an event that seemed trivial but carried hidden weight in the politics of the company. Trapped. That was the only word for it. He wanted to protect her, but he also knew what it would cost to step back. That evening, he walked through the front door exhausted, his mind still caught in the tug of war. Anna noticed. She always did. She didn't press him, though. Instead, she cooked dinner quietly, offering small smiles here and there, as if she were trying to reassure him without words. But later that night, while he was gathering his things for the next day, she lingered by the doorway of their bedroom. She watched him pack his bag with files and notebooks, her expression unreadable. He caught her looking once, but she turned away quickly. The next morning, rushing to leave, he slung his bag over his shoulder without checking it carefully. It wasn't until later, at the office, that he reached inside for a pen and felt the folded edge of a note tucked between his papers. Unfolding it, he saw her handwriting, small and careful. "I trust you. Go if you want. Just promise me you'll come back safe." The words hit him harder than any lecture from his colleagues. He sat there for a long moment, staring at the note, his throat tightening. It wasn't just permission. It was her way of setting him free from the guilt she feared she had placed on him. She was saying she wouldn't hold him back, that she believed in him enough to let him go, even if it hurt her. He closed the note slowly, pressing it against his chest before slipping it back into his bag. The pressure from his colleagues, the weight of expectation, the fear of betraying Anna's trust, they all swirled inside him. But her words gave him something no one else could, the strength to choose not just for himself, but for both of them. And with that note in his bag, he knew that whatever decision he made, it wouldn't be about guilt anymore. It would be about trust. Friday night arrived faster than he expected. All day he carried Anna's note in his bag, unfolding it more than once, just to remind himself of the trust she had placed in him. By the time evening came, he wasn't thinking about the party as a chance to impress anyone. He was thinking about it as a test, not of his loyalty to the firm, but of his loyalty to her. He dressed carefully, choosing a simple suit, nothing too flashy. As he tied his tie, Anna appeared at the doorway. She didn't say much, only offered a small smile and smoothed the collar of his jacket. "You'll be fine," she whispered, though he could see the flicker of anxiety in her eyes. He wanted to stay home, to wrap her in his arms and forget the whole thing, but instead he kissed her forehead gently. "I'll be back early," he promised. The venue was buzzing when he arrived, filled with the hum of laughter, clinking glasses, and background music that was just a little too loud. The moment he stepped in, he felt a subtle weight press against his chest. He could almost hear Anna's voice from the night before, trembling, confessing her fear. He moved carefully, deliberately. When offered a drink, he declined with a polite smile and took sparkling water instead. When a colleague teased him, "Come on, live a little," he just laughed lightly and sipped his water. The temptation to blend in, to drink, to let the night blur was there, but every time he looked around at the crowded room, he remembered the look in Anna's eyes. That was enough. He mingled politely, shaking hands, listening more than he spoke. A few younger colleagues joked with him, nudging him toward the dance floor or introducing him to women from other departments. He kept his responses friendly but distant, never crossing a line. Whenever the atmosphere grew too casual, too loose, he caught flashes of Anna's tears in his mind, her voice whispering, "Not all gatherings end with laughter." It was like a compass guiding him, keeping his feet steady. "Why so serious tonight?" one of his co-workers finally asked, chuckling as he handed out shots to the group. "You're usually more relaxed at these things." He smiled faintly, shaking his head, just keeping it professional. The co-worker rolled his eyes and moved on, but the comment lingered with him. Why so serious? Because he understood now. He could see through the gloss of the event, the masks everyone wore, the way alcohol loosened boundaries. To most, it was harmless fun. But to Anna, and now to him, it wasn't just a party. It was a place where lines blurred, where safety could be stolen in a moment, where someone's life could be altered forever. He stood at the edge of the room for a while, watching colleagues laugh too loudly, watching hands linger too long on arms, watching eyes glimmer with something that had nothing to do with work. And for the first time, he felt what Anna must have felt years ago, how quickly a space meant for celebration could turn toxic. It struck him then. This wasn't just her wound. It was a reality, one he had been blind to because he had never stood in her place. And while he couldn't undo her past, he could honor it by refusing to be part of the same careless culture. So he stayed just long enough to be seen, to shake the right hands, to fulfill the expectation. Then he slipped out early, ignoring the teasing calls of, "Leaving already?" As he walked to his car, the night air cooled against his face. He felt lighter. He had come, yes, but he hadn't betrayed her trust. And more importantly, he had begun to see the world, and his place in it, through her eyes. The party had reached its peak when he realized he couldn't stay any longer. Colleagues were laughing loudly, raising glasses, flirting shamelessly, and he felt a tightening in his chest. Every joke, every careless touch, every raised eyebrow reminded him of Anna's confession, her trembling hands, the way her eyes had filled with tears when he mentioned the work party. He took a deep breath and politely declined another drink. "Come on, the after-party will be fun," one colleague teased. He smiled faintly, shaking his head. "Not tonight. I've got an early morning tomorrow." Inside, it wasn't just an excuse, it was the truth. He didn't want to be there any longer. Not in a space that could so easily erode boundaries. Not in an environment that might have once hurt Anna, and might have hurt him too if he weren't careful. Driving home, the city lights blurred past, but his mind was clear. She cried because she thought I'd drown in the same poison she once escaped. The thought settled heavily in his chest. Her fear had been protective, rooted in trauma, and now it guided him. He realized how much he wanted to honor that fear, not as a limitation, but as a way to prove his loyalty and love. He passed a florist on the way home and pulled over, choosing a bouquet of simple, soft flowers, lilies and white roses. He thought about Anna waiting for him, fragile yet resilient, still carrying the shadows of a night that had haunted her for years. The flowers were a small gesture, but to him, they symbolized more than apology. They were a promise. When he finally stepped through the door, the bouquet cradled in his hands, Anna looked up from the couch, surprised. Her eyes widened, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I thought you'd stay late," she said softly. "I couldn't," he replied, handing her the flowers. "I thought about you the entire time. I didn't want to be anywhere that would make you fear again, or me fear losing myself." Her hands trembled slightly as she accepted the bouquet, pressing a single flower to her chest. The unspoken words between them carried more weight than any conversation could. Understanding, trust, and a shared commitment to face the world together on their own terms. That night, he realized that leaving the party early wasn't a sacrifice. It was the beginning of a turning point, a choice to prioritize love, respect, and healing over obligation or appearances. He pulled into the driveway earlier than he had planned, the evening still young, but the party already fading behind him. As he stepped inside, the familiar scent of Anna's home-cooked dinner lingered faintly in the air, but she wasn't in the kitchen anymore. He called softly, "Anna?" She appeared from the living room, her hair slightly messy from a long day, her eyes widening as she saw him. "You're back." He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, I didn't stay too long." Her expression softened, a mixture of relief and surprise crossing her face. She had expected him to be out late, immersed in the crowd, but here he was, home early, standing in front of her as though nothing in the world could pull him away. He walked over, gently taking her hands in his. "No party," he said quietly, "is worth more than your peace. I realized that tonight. Everything else, it can wait." Tears brimmed in her eyes, and a trembling smile broke across her face. "I thought I'd lost you to that world," she whispered, her voice shaking. "But you came back." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as she clung to him, her tears soaking into his shirt. It was a long embrace, one that carried all the words neither had spoken, all the fears and confessions and hidden pains that had been lingering between them for days. They sat together afterward on the couch, still close, and began to talk, not just the surface chatter of daily life, but the deeper, weightier truths. Anna spoke of her fears, her anxieties, and how the memory of that first party had haunted her for years. He listened without judgment, only support, reassuring her that her experiences did not define her, and that she no longer had to face them alone. In turn, he shared his own struggles, his moments of doubt about balancing career and marriage, and how he had felt caught between duty and love. They spoke long into the night, their conversation winding like threads being untangled, knitting them closer than ever before. Together, they set boundaries. Honesty at all times, no hidden fears, no silences that festered into distance. They agreed that they would support one another, not just in the easy moments, but through the shadows of the past and the pressures of the present. It wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up for each other, consistently and fully. By the time they finally went to bed, the air between them felt lighter, charged with a sense of understanding and renewed commitment. For the first time in a long while, Anna rested with the knowledge that her husband had chosen her well-being above all else, that her pain was no longer hers to carry alone. He lay awake for a moment, watching her sleep, reflecting on the past days. Her breakdown hadn't weakened them. On the contrary, it had revealed a strength they hadn't fully recognized, the strength that comes when the truth finally stands between two people instead of silence. And in that quiet night, he knew that love wasn't just about joy and laughter. It was about courage, trust, and the willingness to face even the hardest parts of life together. That realization, heavier and more profound than any party or social expectation, felt like a homecoming all its own. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please subscribe. Our channel Awesome Visual Story.